Tonight, our main speaker is Mary. Please help me welcome Mary.
My name is Mary, and I'm an alcoholic. I brought my big book with me because I'm going to refer to it while I'm speaking. This big book saved my life. Reading it with another person, say my sponsor, it was imperative for me because I couldn't understand anything in it reading it alone. So I want to thank Kirk for asking me to speak tonight and share my experience, strength, and hope. I've learned throughout the years when you're asked to do something in Alcoholics Anonymous, I always say yes, no matter what, because I participate in my own sobriety, and today that's very, very important to me. So I'm going to talk about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like today. I was born and raised in Los Angeles in the San Fernando Valley. I was born into a large Catholic, Italian, Irish family. I had a pretty dysfunctional childhood. I was one of 5 kids, and my mom was super tired. She didn't really keep track of us, and I experienced a lot of trauma when I was a very young child, and it kind of carried through me during my adolescent age. A lot of shame, a lot of guilt. I went to a Catholic school, of course, and I didn't have the best experience there either. I always felt that I just did not fit in. And I started drinking. My first drink was at 12 years old. My parents would always have big parties. The Italian side of the family would come over. And my mom had only one family relative. That was her brother, who was a Catholic priest in Sedona, Arizona. So he didn't make it down very often, but the big Italian side always did for the big parties. And so I went around the house and, started drinking everybody's champagne that was left over in their glass, and that was the first time I ever had this feeling of, oh gosh, just this feeling of relief that, I can face anything. And I'll never forget that day. I remember my mom, she always told me I was going to win an Emmy Award because I was so dramatic, and I still am to this day, but I can pull myself back pretty quickly today. So she thought that I was just faking it of being drunk, but I wasn't. I was really intoxicated, and it felt super good. So, in school, I always hung out with the kids that like to smoke marijuana on the field at lunchtime, and Father John would go around and, expelling this and that kid. So at about 15 years old, I used to go to this place called the Teen Center. There wasn't a lot of extra activities to do outside of my church at that time. So we go to the Teen Center on Wednesday nights, on Friday nights. And me and my boyfriend, I was always boy crazy, would go and have our mixed drinks down by the wash, So I would mix my drinks up from my dad's bar, tequila, vodka, amaretto in this jar, and just shake it up, and I'd take that with me to the Teen Center, and we'd go down and just get completely wasted. And that's just pretty much how I rolled throughout my teen years. I knew nothing about alcoholism. I knew that I had a grandfather that was pretty scary when he would just sit in the corner when we'd have family get-togethers, and he had like red eyes, and he always looked mad. And later on in my years, I found out that he was alcoholic. And I also found out that my mom's father died of alcoholism. When my mom was about 23 years old, she found him, her mother had already passed away. She found her father passed out in the snow in Minnesota where they lived, and he was dead and drunk. He died drunk. And I believe that alcoholism, I believe that there's a certain gene that we carry. That this is just my belief. Because many of my relatives are alcoholics. I've lost many cousins to alcoholism. And when I say alcoholism, it's not always being poisoned by an overabundance of alcohol. It is suicide. It is car accidents. I've lost numerous cousins to suicide because you get to that jumping off point. I've been there, where you find that there's just no hope to go on. And what happened to a couple of my cousins, one by gunshot, one by hanging himself, one by drowning in a pool drunk, those are alcoholic deaths. My dear sweet nephew Joshua, he was my baby. He was, my sister had him at a very early age. I was the older sister. And I used to take Josh out on dates with me. We'd put his, car seat right in the middle of years ago. We put his little car seat between our two front seats, my date and I. We'd take him to the beach and such. And because my sister was pretty irresponsible. And Josh just grew into the most beautiful boy and just so loving and kind and caring, because many of us alcoholic addicts have those attributes of being very kind and sensitive and caring. At least that's been my experience. And so Josh got into trouble with drugs and alcohol in LA, and so my sister moved the family to Las Vegas, which was like, oh Lord, taking this poor boy to Las Vegas. Anyways, Joshua got very, very heavily into all sorts of drugs and alcohol. And I used to pray for him to be put in prison. God, please, have him do something so that he could be put in prison and detox and, get to know what a beautiful life this is. And he was sober, for a few lengths of time. And it was a beautiful thing. And he was on a pink cloud. And Aunt Mary, I've got 30 days. Aunt Mary, I've got a year. I was overjoyed to see this boy blossoming like that. And one night, I got the phone call from his father, Josh is dead. And, the thing about this disease is that we never know if we're going to come back again once we relapse. And I was a constant relapser. And Josh didn't come back. And that broke my heart, because he was my boy, and he was beautiful. He was 28 years old, and it makes me so sad, because, never to become a husband or a father. It's really, this disease, it just wants me dead. It just wants me dead. So just going back a bit, I partied all the time, big partier, life of the party. When I was 22 years old, I moved to Guadalajara, Mexico. And because I had visited Vallarta and Mazatlan, and it's like nonstop parties, everybody's drinking. The bars are always full, and it was so fun, dancing until 7 in the morning. I mean, that was my idea of a good time. And I lived there for a year and a half, and I got to learn Spanish, and I got to drink a lot, like all day, lay on the beach and do nothing but drink. With my girlfriend moved there with me, and we were so happy. And then my mom sent my dad down, and my dad said, okay, time to come home. And he actually ended up spending a month with me. He loved it there. It was really a happy place. Hey, I had a lot of really good, happy drinking times. Awesome, man. Oh, until it wasn't. Until one day, by God's grace, I didn't drink when I was pregnant with either one of my daughters. And that is just a miracle, because I was highly addicted to alcohol. I did not know how to feel feelings without being numb. I had to, I couldn't face life on life's terms, as they put it in the big book. So I was sober, during my pregnancy with both my daughters, and I attribute that only to God's grace, because as soon as I had those babies and weaned them off a little bit, man, I was back stronger than ever. Switched from wine to whiskey. I missed that feeling when I was pregnant. So now we're living in Irvine, California. I'm living a good life. I'm just a suburban alcoholic housewife, and I'm not doing any harm to anybody. I'm just drinking myself into oblivion every night with my wine. And finally something happened, about 18 years ago, something happened in my body. Like, you know how, you're not allergic to peanuts all your life, and then one day you eat a peanut and your throat swells up. All of a sudden you're allergic. That was my experience with alcohol. I could drink and drink and drink, and I love my wine. And then one day I couldn't drink like that anymore. I didn't understand what happened to me. I started blacking out. It was so weird. I started like doing the weirdest things, like not eating all day, just drinking, and then preparing this wonderful dinner party because I loved to entertain, and because that gave me the opportunity to drink too. When I had these wonderful dinner parties, everyone that came, we all drank. That's all we did. So one night I remember I had this wonderful dinner party. I barbecued these beautiful pinwheel steaks, and my then husband's grandmother was visiting from Washington, D.C., and we were going to have a nice family dinner, and everybody sits down to the table, and I go out in the garage, crawl under a table, and just pass out. Where's Mary? Nobody knows where Mary is because I'm hiding under a table in the garage. Those kind of things started happening really frequently. My dear, sweet, both my daughters, I still carry shame over things I did, in front of them. I do, but, God forgives me. God totally forgives me. And I've worked a lot of years on forgiving myself. And I'd fall down the stairs in front of my daughter's high school cheer crowd, the cheerleading squad, just tumble down the stairs, And the girls are like, "What's wrong with your mom?" And I'm okay, just, it's not so funny, It's not so funny to my daughter, And my little one, oh God, she's so precious. She's 23 now, so I've been sober 15 years. So when my former husband had it, he just had it. He just, he didn't get it either. He's like, "What happened to Mary?" I was this good little Christian wife and mother. I took my kids to church every Wednesday night and every Sunday, And what happened to Mary? And so one day I remember I thought, oh my gosh, I have to go to an AA meeting, I think. No, because I knew nothing about AA. It was the trip to the ER for alcohol poisoning. So my husband took me to the ER for alcohol poisoning because, I could drink like 2 cartons of wine with no problem at this point. You build up to be able to drink a lot that would kill the normal person. And he took me to the medical center in Irvine, and he went in to check me in. Everybody was like, there were a million people in the waiting room. And so I decided, now, don't ask me why. Right before he took me to the ER, I threw on like a cocktail dress and a pair of Uggs. And don't ask me why. So I'm looking around. I'm like, oh God, it's crowded in here. I remember feeling that. And I left and I walked home. Well, my poor ex-husband came out to look for his wife. Where is she? And he's running out in the parking lot, and he says to the policeman, "Did you see a blonde woman in a cocktail dress with Uggs?" And they're like, "No." And so he had them looking for me. And I'm just walking down, same boulevard to get to my house. I get home, and all these police come to my door. I'm like, oh God, how do I explain this? And they come in, and they're like, I'm like in a blackout. But I remember, it's really weird because I was in a blackout, but I remember one of the police officers admiring my cross wall. I had all these crosses on my wall. And he's like, "Oh, my sister-in-law has a cross wall too." I'm like, "Oh, that's great." And the woman, I couldn't fool her, the woman cop, she's like, "Do you want me to call someone? Because you don't seem right." I knew I was licked at that point. I'm like, my sister is a forensic psychologist. I can't bullshit her over anything. And I asked her to call my sister because by this time I was tired. I was like almost done. And so they called my sister. She came up from Long Beach, and And everyone took me to the hospital further away in Mission Viejo, so I couldn't walk home. And I waited 9 hours for a bed. It must have been flu season. And by the time I got to that bed, I was 4 times over the legal limit of alcohol. And that was after 9 hours of in that waiting room throwing up, like constantly. I was still 4 times over the legal limit. And I'll never forget, this was the turning point. I'll never forget this, the nurse was like, oh, we're going to hook you up to this, and just pull my veins around. And, she was pissed because, she was pissed at me because, my condition. But the doctor would, wheeled his little chair over to me, right up to my face, and he's like, because I was making a big commotion. I'm going to make a scene if you don't do this and that and the other thing. What the hell? God, this is so crazy to think about. Cunning, baffling, and powerful. And so this doctor with his big blue eyes just wheeled his chair up to me, and he goes, please don't make a scene. You're sick, and I know how you can be helped. And I'm like, well, how? And I wasn't there overnight, but at the end of my whatever they were pumping into my veins, at the end of that, he brought me a list of AA meetings in the Orange County area, and he said, go to one of these and see what happens. And I was like, okay, well, I'll try. So I went to an AA meeting in Orange County, and I met some really wonderful women, and they related with me right away and said, you got to do this. It looks like you may have to go into treatment. I'm like, what? 30 days? I can't do 30 days in treatment. What are you talking about? I got a household to run. That's a big joke. Running my household? I was drunk all the time. So, at that point, I was willing to go in for 30 days. But at that point, he's now my ex-husband, but he had papers drawn up to sell our house. We're moving to Arizona. I'm like hell, I'm moving to Arizona. I was born and raised in California. And all my siblings are still there. And sure enough, got an offer on the house 2 days later, and we were packed up, moving to Arizona so that I could get sober. So, he didn't know anything about alcoholism. I didn't know anything about alcoholism. So we thought a change of view might do me good. And I got here, and I was so pissed. I cried for 2 years. I kept praying for God to let me see the beauty in the dirt. I had a white picket fence with my calla lilies and roses, and I was like 10 minutes to the beach. And here he moved me to Phoenix, Arizona. That man saved my life, and to this day I thank him because, it took me a year living in Phoenix and some other horrific things that happened. I don't have to go into those, but I made my way into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous because I was so tired. Oh, God, I was so tired. I wanted a good life for my daughters. I didn't want them to be ashamed of their mother. The thing is that I couldn't stop drinking. So I went to AA, a meeting, and I was like, okay, this is my Bible. And that big book, that is sacrilegious. I brought my Bible to meetings, and the people in the meetings just said, Mary, just keep coming back. And, I would flip my Bible open to, but it says here. And they're like, well, this is the book that we go by, and that's the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And, they didn't throw me out. I was so thankful. They didn't throw me out. They just told me to quit coming back. To keep coming back, not quit coming back. Stay out of here. Doors were locked the next day. No, they were super kind, because we don't shoot our wounded. We don't. The women in the beginning, they let go of me with love. So I found myself alone. But I kept going to meetings, and to this day, I have a heart for the newcomer, because I know what it was like to not have anyone to talk to in the early stages of trying to get sober, but not succeeding and relapsing. But the thing is, I relapsed, but I kept coming back to meetings. The meetings saved my life. And I eventually found women that they say, find someone that has what you want, whatever. You know, I found a woman that I connected with. You know, she did cakewalks at the school like I did. She drank at every teacher-parent conference like I did. We clung to each other for life because we had so much in common, and we were so knocked down from this disease. We were just completely and utterly exhausted. I wanted a good life for my kids, and it wasn't until I kept going to meetings in Phoenix, in Ahwatukee, and one day accumulated on top of another and another and another. And honest to God, this is a one day at a time thing, 24 hours a day. Because, you know, I have bad days. Sure, gosh almighty, I do. I celebrated 15 years of sobriety, but I can tell you this. Very few of those years were good emotional sobriety days. I didn't do a lot of things that I was suggested to do. And 3 years ago, I kind of fell away from the program. I stopped going to meetings. I stopped taking the carts back to the correct place in the grocery store shopping lot. You think that's something trivial, but I'll tell you, it's the little things that we do that add up. You know, doing the next right thing, they add up. And it's important for me today to have that kind of integrity that I can say and be an example of doing the next right thing, because that's what I strive to do today. And to love my neighbors, that's what I strive to do today. And anyways, I wanted to read something that really helped me from the doctor's opinion. Let me see here. I had to surrender to the fact that I was an alcoholic and that I had a disease and that I could not safely drink alcohol. So, I'm sorry, let me see here. I highly suggest everyone to read the doctor's opinion because it was written by a doctor that knew what he was talking about. He was a well-known doctor. Okay, so on XXVIII, this paragraph says, men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that, while they admit it is injurious, so I could admit when I was drinking my tumblers of wine that it was going to result in an injury of some sort. They cannot, after a time, differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. I didn't know anything different than being, drunk. I mean, it got to the point where, I would wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and have my first swig of vodka before I took my daughter to school. It turned into a 24-hour thing, worse and worse and worse. They are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience a sense of ease and comfort, which comes at once by taking a few drinks which they see others taking with impunity. After they have succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there's very little hope of his recovery. So, to me, a psychic change is a complete change in thinking, a spiritual experience, a completely different way a personality change. And I've experienced that in my years in Alcoholics Anonymous. I look at things differently today. I pause when I'm agitated. I keep my spiritual life on a high plane that's imperative to my recovery today because I work on it on a daily basis. When I got my first sponsor many years ago, and she would make suggestions, and of course I just did whatever I wanted to do, and it resulted in ugliness. She finally just said, "Mary, just read page 86 to 88 every single day." Page 86 to 88 is something that I read every day to this day to help keep me sober. It's just direction for my day on page 86. It talks about, upon awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. Before we begin, I ask God to direct my thinking because my thinking is still off. My thinking's off. I think differently than the normal person. So I need to really work on this. I ask Him to divorce me from self-pity, self-seeking, and dishonest motives. Every single day, I read 86 to 88. It helps me to plan for my day. I talk to my sponsor almost every day to this day. She's in Ahwatukee, and she's undergoing chemo and radiation, and she's keeping the faith. She's a woman that I really look up to. No matter what happens in our lives, we need to keep doing the next right thing. So I talk to other women. I am in the middle of a herd today. I have beautiful women up here. I moved here in May of 2019 from Phoenix. Let me know when my time is almost up because I have no idea. I moved here in May from Phoenix for the big job. I got this really killer job up here. So I moved, and that was huge for me, leaving my 2 daughters, who I'm very close to, and my grandchildren in Scottsdale. And I worked at my big job for 5 months, and then I got laid off. And since then, I haven't been able to find another job up here. But you know what? I am sober today. I am sober by God's grace. I've met these beautiful women up here that are like sisters. I stay close to people in this program because they think like I do. I make phone calls every day when I'm feeling down and out and self-centered. Yesterday, my poor boyfriend, he said to me, you're feeling sorry for yourself. You're feeling insecure. And oh boy, see, my mean old character defects came out so bad because he was calling me on it. You're not supposed to see that I'm feeling insecure because I haven't been able to find a job up here in months. You're not supposed to see that. That's not who I am. I get the job. And I just attacked him, poor guy. He ran over and took his blood pressure when we were in Walmart. He said that I made his blood pressure shoot up. That's not funny. He's such a good man. He's not used to crazy thinking. I still got stinking thinking. But today, I know what's right and I know what's wrong. And I know the tools that I can pick up to help me in Alcoholics Anonymous to remain sober on a daily basis. Today I have a beautiful life. I have 2 beautiful grandchildren, and they live only an hour and 15-minute drive away in Scottsdale. Today my daughter, my 34-year-old daughter, she allows me to babysit my grandchildren. 15 years ago, she wouldn't have left me with her pet turtle, let alone her children. I'm honored today that my 23-year-old daughter calls me for advice and respects her mom, because I can offer her pretty good suggestions today. I have a clear mind and clear thinking. I wake up in the morning with gratitude, no matter what's going on in my life. Right now, right now some pretty big things are going on in my life. But I know that no matter what, I will get through them without a drink. I will get through them with God's help. I go to Him for everything. and He always answers my prayer. Maybe not the way I think it should be answered, but He always answers my prayers. And that's really about all I have. I'm just very, very glad to be here tonight. Thank you.
Let's give another round of applause for our speakers this evening. This has been a regular meeting of the Rarely Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. You are cordially invited to join us again next week. Please bring a friend. There are approximately 100 meetings of AA each week in the Prescott area. We advise that you attend as many as possible. We hope you will join us again soon. After the prayer, will the people who volunteer to do that stuff, and your court cards are on the back table. Let's circle up and say the Lord's Prayer, and thank you for coming.